Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Jankowski, the marketing manager here at GlideFast, and I will be monitoring today's webinar, New in ServiceNow, Workplace Service Delivery and Vaccination Status. Please utilize the Q&A if you have any questions throughout today's session. We have Jacqueline Colin, Adrian Pagano, and Candace Brown from ServiceNow, and they're also going to help answer the questions that you may have. We're also going to be having a Q&A session at the end, so you can hold some questions till then as well. I'm excited to introduce today's presenters, Paul Group and Jeff Gore. Paul is the Director of Solutions Consulting at GlideFast, and Jeff is the Senior Director of Product Management at ServiceNow. Before we get started, I'd like to ask you guys one quick polling question. Are you familiar with workplace service delivery and vaccination status? All right, so it looks like it was about 50-50. Now I'd like to hand things over to Jeff Gore.
Thank you very much, Lauren, and thank you very much for attending today. So we have a pretty full agenda where we're going to be covering ServiceNow's workplace service delivery solution, which is inclusive of our safe workplace applications, including vaccination status. And then Paul is going to be actually showcasing the capabilities that I'm speaking to with that heavy focus on vaccination status. So, we have a full agenda and hopefully we can make this pretty interactive for this group. We'll answer any questions accordingly. So before we get started, I think it's one thing that's important to note is that at ServiceNow, we're viewing the concept of return to work and workplace service delivery as a part of a comprehensive portfolio of employee-facing solutions. We all understand that in the year 2021, we're all faced with a dynamic hybrid working environment where you have employees that are working from home. You've got employees that are in the office and a whole bunch of employees in between that we're going to call a hybrid worker. And these workers need digital engagement channels to make sure that they have access to services, including all of the aspects related to a safe return to work, as well as any of the dynamics around workplace services in general. So we put it in a broader context, but within the notion of managing a safe and efficient workplace, what we're going to be talking about today is how do we support that hybrid working model and how do we deliver solutions that can actually make sure that an employee can return into an office? How do we have the policies and procedures to make sure that that can be accomplished? We do those things within our safe workplace solutions. And then really to tie to what we are seeing as the real story of 2021, how do we look at our workplace service delivery functions holistically and make sure that employees know the processes to return into an office? They can do things like reserve space, understand where other employees are working, where are they sitting, and be able to support them with any workplace services, functions, while also making sure that your needs of managing your corporate real estate and optimizing your space is accounted for. And so it's a big charter, but we want to make sure we can address each of these concepts within our solutions. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Okay, so why workplace service delivery? Now, I've sort of alluded to this in my introduction, but we're talking about a hybrid working environment. Hybrid workers, a hybrid workplace. And what becomes of that is that we need to look really at three things. One, the workplace service experience is now critical to be made digital. You need to make sure that employees have access to services in a moment or in a place that makes sense for them, right? So if I am an employee that is in the office, then maybe it makes sense for me to be able to access all of my workplace services from a portal environment. How do I register visitors? How do I make sure that people that are coming to the office understand our policies and procedures? If I'm an employee that's a hybrid worker and I'm coming in every other day or on an ad hoc basis, I might need to be able to do things like access services from a mobile device or through a conversational interface. So the concept of having digital experiences to support workplace services has become an imperative. Reservations are now critical, where before, when we all had our pre-assigned space in the office, maybe we didn't care so much about, where other team members are going to be sitting because they're always sitting in a consistent place. But if everything is a hot desk now and I need to make sure I can meet with my team, drive productivity, or have a workshop. Having that reservation experience and all the associated services has now become an imperative. And then finally, when I've got all of these individuals coming in on an ad hoc basis, how can we make sure that we're optimizing the corporate real estate that we have? Looking at space utilization, driving cost efficiencies. If one particular neighborhood is always getting filled and another neighborhood is always empty, maybe there's opportunity for us to reallocate space and drive efficiencies within how employees are interacting with our physical working environment. So all of these things become sort of the impetus to what it is we're going to offer for workplace services. So now let's just dive in and actually talk about what some of these capabilities are. Now, at this point, I'm talking about ServiceNow's Workplace Service Delivery Solution, or WSD, as you're going to see it called. So I'm going to talk about the things that are available within this solution. This is a relatively new technology for us. We launched this in October of 2020. We launched this because we understood the nature of how the working environment was changing. And we've very rapidly been able to build an investment or innovation cadence where the things that I'm going to talk about are actually all available. And we're going to continue to enhance these over the course of time. Knowing that this is a dynamic working environment, we will continue to update these applications monthly to make sure that you always have the latest features, the latest capabilities as we start seeing what 2021 is shaping up to be. So the first thing that we're going to support is a concept called workplace case management. And so in order to support your employee populations, we need to make sure that if they have any questions, if they have any concerns, if there's break fix requests or just general inquiries, how can they actually submit those requests in a structured way? And we're going to do that through this workplace case management solution. This is where employees are going to have the ability to ask their questions or submit their requests. And then agents within your facilities or workplace services organization will be able to respond to these inquiries. They'll leverage knowledge base, they'll leverage predefined templates, they'll leverage predefined workflows to actually fix any issues that might be occurring within the space. But essentially, it's all about driving that employee to facilities engagement and making sure that if there's a question, if there's a concern, if there's an issue, we can get it resolved as efficiently as possible. So this is really foundational. This is how we're going to make sure that we can support employees in this process. And once again, through any digital channel, you're seeing two here, you're seeing a portal and you're seeing mobile device. Once again, it's that mindset that we know how employees are engaging with us. We know what type of employee we're dealing with, and we're going to give them the appropriate support channels. So once we have case management, we then move into our second big bucket of capability. We're going to call this workplace reservation management. And really, this is the notion that everything needs to be reservable now. Once again, if I had a predefined space, if my team had predefined space, if we had well-established neighborhoods within our facility, maybe this isn't required. But now that you have so many employees in a hybrid working model, it's critical that they know how to do things. Like, how do I reserve a parking space? How do I get a visitor badge? How do I reserve a hot desk? How do I know where other members of my team are working so that I can sit near those workers? How do I book a conference room? How do I book catering that ties to that conference room? So all of these services now are super critical, and they all need to be provided through workplace reservation management. And so you got case and you got reservations, and this really becomes the foundation for a great workplace service experience and is going to set you up for success in 2021, because you need these capabilities to be able to make sure that you can return employees into a workplace in a structured fashion. So that's the first two buckets. Moving on, and I sort of alluded to this earlier, there is now the notion that there's new policies, new procedures. You're not just going to have visitors in the same way as you did pre-COVID. And so having a seamless experience for your visitors, where visitors can be well informed as to the processes and procedures we have in place. We can handle the booking process and making sure that we have folks on the list that they're actually available or allowed to return to the corporate facility. And how do I make any additional ask of that visitor? Like if I'm going to ask that visitor to complete a pre-screening, for example, how can I actually tie that into a structured workflow? And all of this is going to be available within this workplace visitor management solution. So this is looking at the registration of guests all the way to the visitor experience. Once we have the reservations and case management, visitors are coming in, we then can start looking at the space itself. And how do we actually allow a user to interact with a floor map and say things like, I want to reserve this space. I can see where individuals within my team are sitting and I want to go sit near them. Or I'm in this particular space and I want to raise an incident here. We do all of this with workplace space mapping. Today, we have a partner that we work with on this. This partner's name is Mapped In, and we leverage their capabilities to provide these interactive floor maps today. So it's not a requirement, but if you actually want to visually see the space and have the visual floor maps, this becomes a nice additive capability that we can bring to bear. Now we move into really the final outcome, where instead of this just being getting employees back into the office and having employees interact with the workplace in a new way, you also have to drive some outcome here, which is making sure that you've optimized your corporate real estate spend, right? So if you don't have individuals coming in every day, or if they're only coming into specific locations, specific floors, how do I take that data to actually institute some optimization activities? And that's where workplace space management comes in. This is where I can look at overall utilization, I can look at capacity, and I can handle the moves processes if we need to reassign space, add on to an existing neighborhood, reduce the size of a particular neighborhood, so on and so forth, as well as bring in some of the proactive workplace maintenance activities as well. So space management becomes sort of like that next area that we believe our customers are going to be moving into based on the trends and based on what we're going to expect to see in 2021. Everything that I said, I've been alluding to the concept of multi-channel. Multi-channel is important. I keep saying it's because of this hybrid worker. We don't know the type of employee you're interacting with. They're not all going to be on desktop. They're not all going to be on mobile. They need to have all these channels open to them to complete their actions. Virtual agent is one of those channels. We have thought about the conversational interfaces required to deliver this type of experience. And so we've pre-built a bunch of virtual agent conversations in support of workplace services. And we've also thought about the common KPIs, the common reports that organizations might need to look at as it relates to the overall workplace service delivery process and continuous improvement initiatives. So this will tell us the KPIs. You can use this data to continue to optimize your real estate spend. So now everything I just spoke about was called workplace service delivery. But in May of 2020, we also launched applications that we call our Safe Workplace Suite. And essentially, these were about looking at workforce and workplace readiness as it relates to getting employees back into the office to begin with. Now, we understand that the talk track and the conversation around getting employees back into an office is very much aligned with the future steady state of workplace service delivery. And so we've actually bundled these two solutions together. And so now if you work with us on workplace service delivery, all of the safe workplace capabilities that I'm about to talk about are also included within WSD. And so this is where we're looking at that workforce and workplace readiness. And so when you need the functionality like readiness surveys, so asking an employee, are they ready to return into an office? Using that data to kick off workflows that will actually drive the process for that employee to follow once we've indicated their readiness to return. All of that is available within this employee readiness survey. Sort of tied to that is the concept of employee travel safety. So maybe an employee is not going to return to one of our facilities. They're going to return to some other location, or maybe our organization is a consultancy, or we have customers that we have to go visit. Well, if we're visiting other locations, employee travel safety can put similar processes around that we talked about with employee readiness. We can put that around the concept of traveling to another site. Now, once you get onto a site, it's about health screening. Many of our customers will use us for a health screening process, because once you've indicated a readiness to return, once you are physically returning into that office, you might need to have employees self-attest that they are not sick, that they meet all their requirements, potentially that they have received a vaccine. That could be tied in here as well. And we're going to use that so that when that employee shows up in the office, we can actually verify that they're cleared to attend. If anyone has children in school or children in sports, you're probably used to the concept of a daily health screening, because we're following this process in our everyday lives today. Moving on to the workplace readiness side, we do show you a holistic view as the overall readiness of your facility to have employees in a dashboard. We do have capability for managing personal protective equipment if you're in the business of assigning this or providing this equipment to your employee populations. And then we also have what we call workplace safety management, which really is the foundation for that workplace reservations that I've previously spoken to. And then finally, we have solutions that are included here that really are focused on employee safety. So at this point, you've got your processes for reservations and for case management. You've looked at the willingness or readiness of your workforce to return, and you've looked at the readiness of your workplace to accept those new employees coming back. Well, now there's a bunch of things we have to do behind the scenes once they're there to make sure that we are driving that employee safety. Firstly, contact tracing is a discipline that is likely here to stay for 2021, where if you have any incidents within your workplace, how do we actually, in a structured fashion, identify what is your level of exposure within your organization? So how do I know who you are sitting near, who you've been interacting with, when you checked into the facility, and how do I bring all that data together to see what is our overall level of exposure if an incident were to occur? And so this is likely something you're going to need to continue to operate in 2021, just to make sure that we're driving for employee safety. Then the health and safety testing. You may have processes where you need to test employees, right? So either it is a part of your procedure for getting employees back, or it's a necessary procedure based off of what takes place within contact tracing when you see exposure. The concept of managing the testing of employees, we provide within health and safety testing. And then finally, we have this concept of vaccination status, which is the newest application that we've bundled together within Safe Workplace and Workplace Service Delivery. And vaccination status is where we're going to gain the insight into the current state of employee vaccinations in your workforce. So the overall notion that you do need to know the status of vaccinations within your employee population. You do need to provide the ability for an employee to self-report that they have completed a vaccine. It's the overall data model that says, based on the type of vaccine that the employee received, we should expect to see a follow-up from this employee 4 weeks later if they took this particular vaccine, those types of things. And then how do I use this tied to all of the other concepts that we just spoke to, where we can make sure that if we have a health screening, we can actually leverage vaccination status as a part of it. Or if you have contact tracing, this piece of data becomes important. And then finally, if you're going to support workplace reservations, maybe you will have procedures saying, based on the vaccination status of your employees, what can they or that can they not do? So this all helps you to promote that safe workplace and working environment. So without further ado, I'm really excited to hand off to Paul, who's going to actually showcase vaccination status there and show how this looks in an actual real-world example, a real-world implementation. So Paul, I'm going to stop share. The ball is yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. So within vaccination status here, there's a couple of pieces that kind of work together with it. So emergency outreach is another app that ServiceNow recently released, and it allows you to go ahead and get consent that that their employees are okay giving you the information that they've been vaccinated. Because some people will feel that information is kind of personal and more around the healthcare guidelines. So there is this thing of emergency outreach. So what we have here is it's set up. You can see here we have different audiences. So if you want to blast out notifications to part of your organization, all the organization, you can have that kind of determined based on your audience. And then have your consent here of, hey, we need you to update your privacy consent to give us consent to collect information that you're vaccinated against COVID. So once all that's configured, we'll go ahead and fire that notification off. And then what I'll do is I'll jump over here to a mobile view, and we can see here under the more down here in the bottom right, there's a little icon saying, hey, we have some kind of notification. So if I pull that up, you can see here, there's an update user privacy consent. So from their mobile device, they're able to say, hey, I got a notification from my organization that I need to take action on something. And you can use this for, many other things besides just the privacy consent. But for this scenario, we want to say, hey, we need your consent so that we can start tracking that you're vaccinated as you come back to the office. So you'll see here they have a little bit of information about it. They can view the consent. And then you can, populate all the information about what they're consenting to, making sure they feel good about it. And then obviously, come down here, say, I agree, and go ahead and submit. At that point, they've submitted that they are, have no problem, giving you their information. And they also can come back in here and say, hey, I want to change my preference. And let's say, I decide to withdraw my consent. So now they can easily come back and, withdraw the consent. So, from the mobile app as well, if we go into the health tab here, there's this report vaccination. So this is where the vaccination status really comes into play. So you fire off and let everyone know, hey, we need to, keep track of who's been vaccinated, who's not, as we return to the workplace. Because let's say we want to have everyone fully vaccinated before we allow everyone in the building together. So you see here, I just withdrew my consent a few minutes ago. So now it's going to say, hey, I can't even submit this to give you my information that I've vaccinated or not because I have not consented. So if I click here, it'll take me right back to that consent form. And basically, it's going to say, I have to agree to give you the information about being vaccinated before I can go through with vaccination status. So now if we pull up that vaccination status form, we'll see here, it defaults to no. So have you been vaccinated? Let's go ahead and say, yes, I have. It's going to ask you for the date. So let's say it was, last Monday. And it's going to ask you which vaccination you got. And then we'll go ahead and submit that. And as you know, for a lot of these vaccinations so far, you have to get vaccinated twice before you're fully vaccinated. So if we go back over to the UI view here, we can see here as a vaccination status administrator that you can see there are responses. So here we go. Fred just responded that yes, he's got a dose of it. Now we can also look here and see the vaccination profiles. And we can see Fred's here, but he is not completely vaccinated. So that's because the system knows, hey, he requires 2 doses in order to get fully vaccinated. So while he has gotten his first dose, we're still waiting on that second dose. And we can set up a reminder to let him know, hey, let's make sure you update us once you get that second dose, and then we'll okay you to come back into the office. So if we go back to the mobile app here, let's say, the 28 days has passed. And Fred here wants to go ahead and report and give him one final update that, yep, I've gotten my full vaccination now. So we can go back here, say, have I been vaccinated? Yes. And we'll say I did it today. And we want to click the same vaccination. And we'll submit that through. And if we go back over here and check out the profiles, we'll see now Fred is marked as true. So now we know Fred is fully vaccinated. He's gotten both of his doses of the vaccination, and he's ready to return to the workplace. So that's all I've got for vaccination status. Jeff, I'll go ahead and toss it back over to you.
Very good. I think that was super compelling. Thank you, Paul, for covering that. I'm going to go back, and at this point, we wanted to turn the call over to the team to see what questions they may have.
Yes. And while you guys are sending in the questions, I'm going to launch another poll right now. So after today's webinar, are you now more familiar with workplace service delivery and vaccination status? And it does look like we do have some questions coming in. So the first one is, if a user revokes their privacy consent after they have started the process, is the data still available in the instance? Or can it be removed or pruned through an automated process?
So Paul, I don't know if you wanted to take that. It's tied to the demo.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, we definitely can, prune it automatically. The data still exists in the platform as of, kind of out of the box feature, but definitely, have the possibilities to go through and prune that data out. There's also some settings for, how often you want to keep the vaccination status details. So if you need to, clear it out every 90 days or every so many days, that has other options as well for that.
Awesome. And we actually got two similar questions. Can we easily configure vaccination status to account for new vaccines as they come out?
Yeah, so I'll take this. I think the first thing I wanted to note as it relates to vaccination status in any of these applications is that we deliberately built the applications with the mindset that we don't know what we don't know, and we need to have a rapid pace of innovation, right? So I mentioned up front that we've launched these applications. We launched them. The Safe Workplace launched in May of 2020. Workplace Service Delivery came out in October of 2020. And we've released updates to them every month. And actually, as it relates to Safe Workplace, we've released updates 2 times a month. So these are on a rapid innovation path. We built vaccination status so that it could be configurable. And so Paul actually just showed there how we had pre-configurations for Pfizer and Moderna and such, right? But as new vaccinations come out or new vaccines come out, you could just go add them. So it's got a configuration utility to add them. When we ship our updates twice a month, we will ship those pre-configurations, but it is pretty US centric what we've shipped. And so you might have a global workforce, and you can actually use the configuration module to put any additional manufacturers and vaccines as appropriate. And when new policies, new procedures come up, we'll continue to evolve that application.
Awesome. Here's another question for you guys. Is it possible to add a workflow step to confirm the vaccination was truly received by the employee?
So I'll take that as well. And it actually is, unfortunately, a trend that we see in customer conversations, which is just the notion of fraud as it relates to like a CDC vaccination card. Out of the box, we're not making any calls to any provider that says like, look at this card and actually validate if it's real or not real. It is a manual process, but we have built into the solution just the notion that you could have approvals, you could have someone validate, you can actually attach the artifacts that prove that you've been vaccinated and have some form of check take place within your organization. Once again, back to my previous answer though, if we see that there starts becoming some industry accepted way to validate that the employee truly was vaccinated, we can continue to update our solution. We've given ourselves the development capacity to be able to rapidly respond if that were to be the case. But today it's a manual process that you would have to follow.
Awesome. And then I just did see one last question come through asking if this webinar will be recorded. It will be, and it will be posted on the GlideFast YouTube as well. And we'll make sure everyone has a link to that who attended today. But that looks like all the questions that came in. So I'd like to give a big thank you to Jacqueline, Adrian, and Candace for helping set up this webinar. And a big shout out to Jeff and Paul for speaking at today's webinar on workplace service delivery and vaccination status. Feel free to follow up with any of us. You guys can reach out to ServiceNow at their website or glidefast.com as well with any other questions. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you very much.